Hey, can we quit stacking stuff on my table saw? What the? No matter what we do, the table saw is usually one of the most abused items in the shop because everybody thinks that it's a good spot to set their belongings, unused items, or items to be put away later. I'm guilty of it. I don't know what woodworker probably isn't. Well, when you do that, you take a chance on causing buildup of rust, friction, and things like that to make your performance go down when you're using that saw. So today I'm going to show you using sandpaper, a lubricant, and some good old elbow grease and a little bit of power sander, how to clean this top up so that you can get the best performance out of your table saw. The first thing we've got to do is we've got to cut through some of the surface rust on the tabletop. And to do so, we need to pick the right grit of sandpaper. Well, to start with, I'm going to actually use a 220 grit sandpaper on a sanding block. Then I'll move to the 220 grit on the sander to hopefully cut through that rust a little bit quicker. Now, you can see that the stains, some of the stains aren't moving, and that's okay. As long as we get that friction build up off of there, we get the surface back to a smooth, crisp, clean surface. I'm going to move past that 220 onto a 320 grit sandpaper, and this is more of an emery cloth type paper. This helps us remove the 220 grit sanding marks and also helps remove any more of that grit that's on there. Now that we've got the 220 and the 320 sandpaper, I'm going to go ahead and move up into our finer grit sandpaper such as the 600. Now you'll see here the 600, it's not nearly as abrasive. It helps to start give us that slick glazed top that we're looking for so we can get that smooth frictionless surface. All right, that's looking great so far. So now we're gonna move to the 1200 grit sandpaper. And for this, what I like to do is I like to use a little bit of lubricant and spray. Now, some people say it's a wet sand. I don't wanna use water here because I really don't wanna re-rust this top. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use liquid wrench. Now, liquid wrench helps to lubricate the pad, keeps the sandpaper from gumming up, and helps us move across that surface to get all those 600 grit sand marks out of that table. What sandpapers we use here, we started off with a 220, we then went to a 320, then we went to a 600 grit sandpaper to start with that fine sanding. Then we finally moved to a 1200 grit sandpaper with a lubricant, and I prefer to use some kind of like oil-based lubricant there, not a water-based lubricant. The next thing we got to do is we got to get that oil off our tabletop. We don't want that going into our project later, so we got to get all that oil from that lubricant off of there. And to do that, I just use a little bit of brake cleaner. now that we've got the tabletop sanded and cleaned with brake cleaner to remove any of the oil impurities, we just need to wax this baby so it's smooth. And for this, I'm going to use a couple of different wax to kind of give it a little test run. The first I'm going to use is one of the old go-tos, the Meguiar car wax. I'm just going to use a little bit of paste wax, like a wood type paste, wood finish paste wax, just to see what kind of smooth top it gives it. And as you can see, this thing is slick. I don't know about you, but this thing looks like it's as slick as it can get. So I'm going to give you a close-up look so you can see how shiny and slick this thing is compared to what it looked like when we first started. So there you have it. That's how you maintain a table saw top. Pretty simple, right? Well, if you keep this thing maintained, maybe throw a little wax on it once a month, twice a month, something like that, depending on your use, this saw, your saw, will be ready for you whenever you call upon it. Remember, that little bit of surface rust causes that little bit of drag when your project slides through that running blade. And any drag that hits that table, that project, while it hits that blade can cause kickbacks, binds, anything. It's an unsafe condition. Now, the slick top's not a necessity, not a must-have, but I'll tell you this, it makes your projects run so much smoother.